I want you to picture a scenario. It's 11:30 p.m. You are lying in bed. The lights are off. You know, logically that you should be asleep because you have that thing in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
But you aren't. You're holding your phone. The blue light is just searing into your retinas, and you are scrolling.
The doom scroll. We have all been there. It is, I mean, it's the modern condition, isn't it?
It really is. And I want to zoom in on what is actually happening in that moment, because it's not just that I'm looking at pictures. In the span of maybe 45 seconds, I see a video of a war zone, absolutely horrific stuff.
Right.
Then, thumb flick, I see a recipe for the perfect sourdough bread. Thumb flick, a hot take on interest rates from a guy in a truck. Thumb flick.
Cat falling off a table.
Cat falling off a table. Exactly. Thumb flick. A terrifying new scientific study about microplastics in my bloodstream.
It is emotional whiplash. You are cycling through terror, delight, boredom, and existential dread in less than a minute.
It's whiplash, but it's the volume. I was reading the notes for today's deep dive, and a stat it hit me. I have access to more raw information right now in my pocket than the President of the United States had 30 years ago.
Oh, significantly more. And faster. Instantly.
So here is the question that kicked this whole thing off for me, and honestly, it's a question that has been bothering me for a long time. If I have all the data, why do I feel so stupid?
You don't feel like a genius with the Library of Alexandria in your pocket?
I really don't. I feel lost. I feel disoriented. And I don't think I'm alone in this. You'd think that in the information age, we'd all be walking around with this, crystal clear understanding of reality.
Well, you should be the most enlightened generation in history.
But instead, it feels like we're walking through a thick fog. We have the facts, but we don't have the map.
That is the defining paradox of our time. We are drowning in data, but we are starving for orientation. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We have a massive stack of research here. Some really heavy-hitting philosophy, cognitive science, and media theory that suggests our problem isn't a lack of truth.
Which is what I usually blame. I usually think, oh, people are lying to me, or the algorithm is hiding the truth.
Right. We default to thinking it's a fake news problem or, a censorship problem. And those are real issues, sure. But the sources we are looking at today argue it's actually deeper than that.
Deeper how?
The problem is that we are looking for the wrong kind of truth. We are obsessing over capital T truth, when what we're actually craving and what we actually need to function is clarity. And those are two very, very different things.
This brings us to the core concept of today's deep dive, epistemic hygiene. Which, I have to be honest, it sounds a little bit like I need to go to the dentist. It sounds very clinical.
It does sound clinical, but the metaphor is actually perfect. Think about physical hygiene.
Yeah.
Why do you brush your teeth?
To get the gunk off. To prevent cavities.
Exactly. You brush to prevent decay. You wash your hands to stop infection. You have a regimen to keep your physical body functioning in a world full of bacteria and viruses.
Okay.
Epistemic hygiene is the exact same thing, but for your mind. It's about, how do I clean up my thinking process so that I don't get infected by the noise? How do I stop brain plaque from building up?
Brain plaque. I like that image. Or actually, I hate it. It's kind of gross.
It's sticky. It builds up over time if you aren't careful. And today, we're going to try to scrape some of it off. We're going to look at why smart people, and I mean really smart people, with PhDs and high IQs, often have the worst maps of reality.
That's fascinating.
We're going to talk about why every argument on the internet feels like a stalemate.
Oh, the stalemates. Where you argue for 3 hours, you bring all your receipts, you link all your studies, and at the end of it, no one changes their mind. You just hate each other more.
Exactly. And we're going to find out why. Hint. Because you aren't arguing about what you think you're arguing about.
You're not on the same page.
You're not even in the same library. You think you're arguing facts, but you're actually arguing totally different categories of reality.
So we've got a roadmap for today, because this is dense stuff, and I want to make sure we don't get lost in the weeds. First, we're going to break down the difference between truth and clarity.
Yep.
Then we are going to walk through the 7 types of truth, which honestly, that blew my mind. I didn't know there were 7. I thought there was just true and false.
Most people do.
Yeah.
And that's why they get stuck.
We'll talk about the trap of premature simplicity, which is something I think I'm definitely guilty of. And finally, we're going to look at wisdom. Not the, guy on a mountain wisdom, but practical, how do I live in 2025 wisdom.
Let's do it.
So let's jump in. The core tension here is between truth and clarity. I always thought clarity was just seeing the truth clearly. But these sources say they are almost contradictory.
They can be. They are related, for sure, but they are not identical. And confusing them is where all the trouble starts. So let's define them strictly so we know what we are dealing with.
Okay.
Truth, generally speaking, is about correspondence to reality. Does your belief match what is actually there in the universe?
Okay, fair enough. The sky is blue. That's a truth.
Right. It corresponds to what we can observe and measure. But clarity is internal. Clarity is about how understandable and navigable your model of the world feels to you.
So clarity feels good. It feels like certainty.
It provides a sense of control. It reduces anxiety. Humans have to act under uncertainty all the time, right?
Yeah.
We can't carry infinite nuance into every single decision, or we'd never get out of bed.
You'd be paralyzed.
Totally paralyzed. I mean, if you had to calculate the physics of every step you took, you'd fall over. So clarity is often about compression. We take the messy complexity of the world and we compress it down into a map we can use.
That makes sense. You can't navigate a city if your map is a 1.1 scale replica of the city itself.
No, that would be useless.
You need the compressed version. You need the subway map.
Precisely. The
Yeah.
subway map is a great example. Is the subway map true?
Well, yes. I
And-
mean, it shows me where the trains go. It gets me from A to B.
But look at the distance between the stations on the map. They all look equal, right? Like perfectly spaced beads on a string. In reality, one stop might be 2 miles and the next might be 2 blocks. The map distorts the geographical truth.
To give me navigational clarity.
Exactly. It lies to you about the geography to help you get to Brooklyn. The map is clear, but it's not entirely true in the objective sense.
Okay, I see. And so here is the trap.
Mhm.
When does that compression become a dangerous distortion?
It's when you have a map that is very clear, straight lines, easy to read, you know who the good guys and bad guys are, but if it doesn't match the territory in the ways that actually matter, you're going to drive off a cliff.
Because you trust the clear map more than the messy reality.
Yes, and the source material makes a really crucial distinction here. The goal of this deep dive, and really of thinking in general, shouldn't be winning arguments or possessing truth in some abstract philosophical sense.
It's not about collecting facts.
No, the goal is orientation.
Orientation. Like a pilot, you mentioned this.
The pilot metaphor is perfect here. Think about a pilot flying a huge plane at night through a storm. Do they need instruments that give them the absolute molecular level truth of the atmosphere outside?
No, of course not.
Do they need to know the position of every single atom of nitrogen?
No. That would be completely overwhelming. They'd crash for sure.
Right. They don't need perfect truth. They need calibrated instruments. They need to know, am I level? Am I too low? Am I heading north?
They need actionable truth. The truth that helps them fly the plane.
Exactly. Calibration means being close enough to reality to navigate safely. And this is the key part, adjusting when you drift. If a pilot sees their altimeter dropping, they don't argue with it. They don't say, well, my opinion is that I'm high enough.
They don't accuse the altimeter of being biased.
No, they update, they correct, they pull up.
But in real life, especially online, we don't do that. We do the opposite. We lock the steering wheel. We double down.
We do. And that's because of how we consume information. We have to talk about media literacy here, but not just in the old sense of fact-checking. We need to talk about distortion fields.
Distortion fields.
Our brains are wired for something called availability bias.
That's the idea that if I can recall something easily, it must be common, right? Like if I see a lot of news about shark attacks, I think shark attacks are a huge problem.
Exactly. If you see it, it feels prevalent. Now think about your feed. What does it show you? What goes viral?
It shows me the most extreme version of everything. The craziest person screaming in a grocery store, the most violent protest, the most corrupt politician, the most outrageous opinion.
It amplifies extreme suffering, extreme outrage, and very rare events. So you develop a worldview that feels morally urgent. You feel like the world is literally on fire, and it feels clear. You know who the bad guys are.
But statistically, it's a distorted map.
It's completely distorted. You are flying a plane where the altimeter is stuck on crash imminent, even when you are cruising at 30,000 feet.
So I'm confident, I feel clear, but I'm flying with a broken altimeter.
And that is the most dangerous state possible. The risk isn't just being wrong. Anyone can be wrong. The real risk is being confident plus wrong.
Why is that so much worse?
Because if you are uncertain, you look for new data. You update. You scan the horizon for clues. But if you are confident and you are wrong, You lock the steering wheel and drive right into the mountain.
That is a terrifying image, but it explains so much about why people double down when they are challenged. They aren't just defending a fact, they are defending their orientation, they're defending their sense of control.
Yes.
If I admit I'm wrong about this big political issue, I lose my map,
And
then it's mauling.
Exactly. Loss of orientation is existentially terrifying. It feels like vertigo. So we cling to the bad map because a bad map feels safer than no map at all.
Okay, this leads us directly to the meat of this deep dive. Even when we are trying to find the truth, even when we are trying to calibrate our instruments, we're often talking past each other because we don't realize that truth isn't just one thing.
This is the architecture of truth. And frankly, this section is the one that completely changed how I listen to the news, how I read arguments online.
The source calls it a category error. Basically, we use the word truth as a monolith, like it's a big block of granite. Is it true, yes or no?
Right. And in our daily lives, that usually works just fine. Is it raining? Yes or no. Did the Knicks win last night? Yes or no. But when you move to complex systems, politics, relationships, economics, culture treating truth like a binary switch is a complete disaster.
Because there are different flavors of truth, different categories.
Exactly. The source outlines 7 distinct types. And the core argument is that most conflict, most gridlock, happens not because one person is lying, but because person A is using definition 1 and person B is using definition 5. They're playing 2 totally different games with different rule books.
Okay, I want to go through these one by one. I want to make sure I actually get them, and I really want to hear an example for each. Because the list, it's a bit abstract until you see it in the wild.
Let's do it. This is the toolkit.
Number 1 on the list, the big one, the one everyone thinks of, objective truth.
This is the bedrock. Objective truth is physical reality. It is the material world. It exists outside of your mind. Water is 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. That's true whether you believe it or not.
If I drop a bowling ball on your foot, it will hurt, regardless of whether you believe in gravity or not.
It doesn't care about my feelings at all. Zero care. It is indifferent to you. It is tested by measurement, by observation, by the scientific method. This is the domain of physics, chemistry, biology.
Okay, that's easy enough. That's what I usually think of when I say the word truth. But then we move to number 2, logical truth. This one is a little different.
Is this a little subtler? Yeah. Logical truth is about internal consistency. It's math. It's computer code. It's formal logic. Think 2 + 2 = 4.
Wait, isn't that objective truth? I mean, if I have 2 apples and I add 2 apples.
See, that's where they overlap, and it's a good question. But think about it this way. Logical truth is true by definition within a closed system. If I say all A's are B's and X is an A, then it must be true that X is a B.
The conclusion is baked into the premises.
Exactly. You don't need to go outside and run an experiment with apples to prove that. It's true because the rules of logic say it's true.
Okay, so a syllogism. The classic. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal.
Precisely. That is a logically true statement. Even if, hypothetically, Socrates was an immortal alien in disguise, the logic of the sentence would still be valid based on the premises you provided.
So you can be logically true but objectively false.
Correct. And that is a huge source of confusion. A lot of bad arguments are logically valid, the math works out, but they are based on completely false premises, or vice versa.
That drives people crazy in debates. Okay, number 3. This is where it started getting really interesting for me. Functional or pragmatic truth.
This is the domain of engineers, entrepreneurs, parents, and chefs. Functional truth doesn't ask, is it real? It asks, does it work?
The sourdough example from the intro.
That's a perfect one. Imagine we're arguing about the true way to make sourdough bread. You say the one true way is to ferment it for 48 hours. I say no, the true way is 24 hours at a slightly higher temperature. Who is right?
I mean, neither of us, or both of us. It depends on what kind of bread you want.
Exactly. There is no single objective truth hidden in the universe about sourdough fermentation times. But if I mix cement and water and put it in the oven, that is functionally false. It fails the test. It does not produce bread.
So functional truth is tested by its outcomes.
Yes. Think about any kind of practical advice.
Right.
What is the true way to get in shape? There are 1,000 answers. CrossFit, running, yoga, lifting weights. They're all pragmatically true if they produce the desired outcome. But sitting on the couch eating donuts is pragmatically false for that goal.
This actually explained a lot of fights I have in my own life. I'm a very objective truth guy. I want the data. I want the peer-reviewed study. But my wife is often operating on pragmatic truth.
Yeah.
She doesn't care if a big study says X is the best method for kids. She knows that for our kids in our house, method Y works better. It gets the outcome.
And you're both right. But you're pulling different levers from the toolkit. You're arguing data, she's arguing utility. If you try to debunk her lived method with a chart, you aren't winning. You're missing the entire point of the conversation.
I feel seen and attacked at the same time. All right, moving on. Number 4, interpretive truth.
This is the messy one. This is the realm of history, law, and literary criticism. Interpretive truth isn't just about the raw facts. It's about the story that connects the facts and gives them meaning.
Okay, give me a concrete example.
Let's take the fall of the Roman Empire. We have the objective truths. We have dates. We know which battles were lost. We have lists of emperors who were killed. Those are objective facts.
Right, data points.
But if you ask the question, why did Rome fall?
Oh, boy. I know this rabbit hole. There's like 100 different answers.
Exactly. One historian says Christianity made them pacifist and weak. Another says lead poisoning in the water pipes. Another says runaway economic inflation. Another points to barbarian migration pressures.
Are any of them wrong?
Not necessarily. These are all interpretive truths. They are different narratives constructed from the same set of objective facts to explain the why. Each one is a different interpretation of the data.
And this is where we get into so much trouble in politics, right? Because we can all agree on the unemployment rate, that's an objective truth, a number, but we will kill each other over why it's high.
Bang on. Is it high because of corporate greed or because of excessive government regulation? That is an interpretive battle. And you cannot fact-check an interpretive truth in the same way you fact-check a number. You can only argue whether the interpretation is compelling or well-supported by the evidence. But you can't put it under a microscope and get a definitive yes or no.
Which brings us to number 5. This is the one that really sets the internet on fire. Subjective or experiential truth.
My truth.
My lived experience.
This is the reality of the subject. It's internal experience. I feel pain. I feel pressed. I feel in love. This food tastes good to me.
Now, the logic bros, and I have to admit, I used to be one of these, we look at this and say, that's not truth, that's just an opinion, that's a feeling. Facts don't care about your feelings.
And that is a huge, huge categorical mistake. Because if you go to a doctor and you say, my leg hurts, and the doctor says, well, I can't see the pain on the x-ray, therefore it is false, that doctor is an idiot.
Right. The pain is real, even if the cause is unknown.
The pain is an absolute reality for you. It is an experiential truth. It is tested not by measurement, but by sincerity. If you are not lying about your experience, then it is true. The problem arises when we try to take experiential truth and force it to be objective truth.
I feel like the economy is bad for me and my family, therefore the GDP is down.
Exactly. Your feeling of economic anxiety is 100% true, experiential. But if the GDP numbers are actually up, objective, we have a conflict. And our entire society right now is really struggling to distinguish between my feelings are valid and real and my feelings are facts about the external world.
That distinction is everything. If I say I feel unsafe in this neighborhood, that is an experiential truth. It's real. But if I say this neighborhood is statistically the most dangerous in the city, that is an objective claim that might be false.
Correct. And confusing those two is where I would say 90% of arguments on Twitter come from.
Okay. Number 6, we're getting higher up the stack. Moral or normative truth.
This is the ought. This is about what should be. It is wrong to murder. We should help the poor. Freedom is better than tyranny.
Again, you can't find this in a microscope. You can't distill human rights in a test tube.
No. You can stare at a collection of atoms for 1 billion years and you will never find a human right or a justice. These are truths we collectively agree upon. They are social contracts.
But they feel so real.
They feel just as solid to us as gravity. If I see someone kick a puppy, I don't think, well, that is a matter of opinion. I have an immediate visceral reaction. That is objectively wrong.
But it's not objective in the physics sense.
No, it's a moral truth. It's tested by reasoning, empathy, and social consensus. But we treat it as if it's a physical law of the universe.
And finally, number 7, the biggest one, narrative or meaning truth.
This is the biggest picture. This is about identity and purpose. I am a survivor. America is the land of the free. We are the chosen people. My purpose in life is to create art.
These are the myths, and I don't mean myths as in lies. I mean myths as in the grand, organizing stories that we live our lives by.
Yes, these truths tell us who we are, where we came from, and what our purpose is. There are truths of meaning, and people die for these truths. They will go to war for them. You cannot debunk a narrative truth with a spreadsheet. It operates on a completely different frequency.
Wow. Okay, so we have the full stack. Objective, logical, functional, interpretive, experiential, moral, and narrative. That is a lot of levers to keep track of.
It is. And we're usually only aware of one or two in any given time.
The source gives this incredible example of how this plays out in real time, the police funding example. I want to act this out a bit because I think it perfectly illustrates why we can't seem to talk to each other about anything important.
This is the perfect stress test for the entire framework. Let's break it down. Imagine a headline drops on your local news site. City Council increases police budget by 15%.
Okay, instant chaos. Twitter explodes, the dinner table explodes. Why?
Because everyone is looking at that exact same headline through a completely different truth lever. So let's imagine a few people at that dinner table.
Okay.
Take person A. They are an accountant, maybe an analyst. They are looking at objective truth. They pull up a spreadsheet. Look, crime is up 10% year over year. Inflation is up 4%. Therefore, a 15% budget increase is just a basic mathematical adjustment to keep services level. To them, this is just a math problem. It's logical.
So person A is completely confused why anyone is angry. It's just the math, people. What's the big deal?
Right. They're pulling the objective logical lever. Then you have person B. Person B is a community activist. They are pulling the moral truth lever. They say the entire policing system has a history of injustice. We should be funding schools, housing, and mental health services, not more weapons. Increasing this budget is fundamentally wrong.
So they're not even having the same conversation. One is talking numbers, the other is talking good and evil.
Not at all. They're on different planets.
Yeah.
Then you throw in person C. Person C is an elderly one who lives in a high-crime neighborhood. She was mugged last week. She is pulling the experiential truth lever. She says, I am scared. I hear gunshots at night. I just want to see a police car on my corner so I can feel safe enough to walk my dog.
And that fear is 100% real. You can't tell person C your fear is statistically invalid.
You can't. Her subjective experience is true. But then person D steps in. They're a historian or a sociologist. They are looking at interpretive truth, the historical narrative. They say, hold on, look at the last 50 years in this city. Every single time we increase the police budget, police misconduct goes up and community trust goes down. This is just repeating a failed cycle of oppression.
So you have math, morality, fear, and history, all colliding over one headline.
And we haven't even gotten to the person running for office who's using a narrative truth about law and order versus social justice.
It's a total mess.
And here's the tragedy. We usually conclude that the other person is either stupid or evil. Person A, the analyst, thinks person B, the activist, is soft on crime and completely irrational. Person B thinks person A is a heartless fascist who only cares about spreadsheets. Person C, the scared resident, thinks person D, the historian, doesn't care about her personal safety.
But really, none of them are necessarily wrong. They're just fixated on one specific and very valid layer of the truth stack.
That's the category blindness. We are blind to the levers that we aren't personally pulling. We think our lever is the only one that exists.
And that right there is why just clarifying the terms is the first step to wisdom. You have to be able to pause the fight and say, wait a minute, are we arguing about the budget numbers, objective, or are we arguing about justice, moral?
Until you agree on which lever you are pulling, you are just making noise. You're not communicating.
That is so powerful. It makes me want to go back and just replay every single argument I had in the last 5 years.
It's a very humbling framework.
This bridges us perfectly to the next section, the idea of simplicity. Because when someone says, oh, it's actually very simple, usually it's not.
It's simple is often the most dangerous phrase in the English language. It's a huge red flag.
The source talks about the Dunning-Kruger effect here. And usually we use Dunning-Kruger to just say, oh, that person is too dumb to know they're dumb. It's basically an insult.
Yeah. Which is a bit mean-spirited and, frankly, not that useful. The reframe in our source material is much more powerful. It's not about stupidity. It's about that same category blindness.
So how does that work?
When someone says a complex issue like God or the economy or geopolitical war is simple, what they are really revealing is, I can only see one of the 7 levers.
They are blind to the other 6.
Exactly. If you can only see objective truth, then of course religion looks simple and silly. You just ask, where is the data for God? And when there isn't any, you dismiss it. But you're blind to the fact that religion operates on moral, narrative, and experiential truth levers.
And vice versa. If you only see moral truth, then free market economics looks simple and heartless. How can you talk about supply and demand when people are hungry?
Exactly. When someone says it's simple, they are inadvertently telling you the exact boundary of their own understanding.
There's that meme, you know the one I'm talking about? The IQ bell curve meme?
The midwit meme.
Yes.
A classic.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, on the far left you have the simple guys saying Bitcoin is good. In the middle you have the average intelligence guy, the midwit, crying and screaming, writing a thesis on, no, it has no intrinsic value, it's a bubble, it's volatile. And then on the far right, you have the genius guy who just calmly says, Bitcoin is good.
It's a perfect illustration of what the source calls premature simplicity versus earned simplicity.
Okay, let's unpack that. Premature simplicity is the guy on the far left of the meme.
Correct. Premature simplicity ends thought. It's a conclusion reached with minimal information. It says, it's obvious, anyone who disagrees is an idiot. It dismisses all dissent as just ignorance. It closes the door on learning.
This is where most conspiracy theories live, right?
Absolutely. It's simple. The Illuminati controls everything. That's a prematurely simple model that explains the whole world with one single lever.
And earned simplicity is the guy on the far right. The genius.
Earned simplicity comes after you have trudged through the mud of complexity. You've been the guy in the middle, crying and confused. You've looked at the stats, the morals, the history, the human emotions. You've held all the contradictions in your head, and then you distill it down. You find the core principle. You say, here is the essence. It's complicated, but here's the best way forward for now.
So the sentence might look the same on the surface, Bitcoin is good, but the weight and understanding behind it is totally different.
Completely different. And here's the litmus test. Does your summary leave you open to revision? Earned simplicity is always provisional. It says, given what we know now, this seems to be the path, but I could be wrong. Premature simplicity feels closed and certain. It feels like a fortress.
This connects directly to debunk culture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I watch a lot of YouTube, and the algorithm just loves a video with a title like, Logic Destroys Feeling.
Debunk culture is the weaponization of premature simplicity. It's a very specific rhetorical strategy.
How does it work?
It conquers by shrinking the map. It basically says, only my lever objective truth is real. Everything else, your feelings, your cultural meaning, your moral intuition, is fake and irrelevant.
It's epistemic imperialism.
It is. It's saying, my truth lever is the only one that counts. And while it feels good in the moment, it feels like you're winning, it feels like a slam dunk. It destroys any possibility of understanding the human being on the other side.
You're not convincing them, you're just overpowering them.
Exactly. If you debunk someone's deeply held religious belief by proving a historical date in their holy book is wrong, you haven't actually understood their religion. You haven't engaged with the moral or narrative truth. You've just proven you don't even know which game they're playing.
So if we want to move past this, if we want to stop just debunking each other and actually start to understand the world, we have to move up the ladder. We have to move from just knowing things to actually being wise. And the source lays out a really useful hierarchy here. Knowledge, intelligence, clarity, and wisdom.
Let's unpack that stack. This is crucial for anyone who feels overwhelmed by all the information out there. First, you have knowledge. This is collecting the ingredients. It's facts, data, the sheer volume of stuff you know. It's stocking the pantry.
I am a hoarder of ingredients. My pantry is full to bursting.
Most of us are these days.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is intelligence. This is knowing how those ingredients interact. It's raw processing power. It's like being a chemist in the kitchen. You can connect the dots really fast.
Okay, so I have ingredients and I know how they combine. What's next?
Clarity. This is knowing which ingredients actually matter for the dish you're trying to make.
Yeah.
It's filtering. It's looking at 1,000 data points and saying, these 3 are the signal. The rest is just noise.
And finally at the top is wisdom.
Wisdom is knowing what to cook and who you're cooking it for. It's judgment. It's distillation. It's knowing that just because you can make an incredibly spicy curry doesn't mean you should serve it to a toddler.
That's a fantastic distinction. The problem is, as a culture, we seem to be obsessed with the first two. Knowledge and intelligence, accumulation.
We overvalue accumulation. We think if I just read one more article, if I just listen to one more deep dive, I'll finally feel oriented. But often more knowledge makes you feel more lost.
Because you're just adding variables. You're adding more ingredients to an already overflowing pantry.
Exactly. You're filling the pantry till it's overflowing. Boxes are falling off the shelves. But you still don't know how to make a single coherent meal. Wisdom is about subtraction. It's about distillation.
Now, I have to ask, as someone who hosts a show called The Deep Dive, are we part of the problem here? The source material talks about deep dives versus short dives.
It's a great question. And the source is pretty clear. You need both. They're different tools for different jobs. The source uses the camera metaphor.
Okay.
Deep dives, like what we are doing right now, are zooming in. You get to see the texture, the nuance, the hidden variables, the history. That's crucial for building context. You need to see the individual fibers of the leaf. But short dives, distillation summaries, the executive summary are zooming out. That's for orientation. That's for checking the map and seeing where you are.
If you walk around zoomed in at 100x magnification all day, you're going to bump into walls.
You will have a great knowledge of the texture of the wallpaper, but you won't have a clue which room you're in. Wisdom is knowing when to adjust the lens. Sometimes you need to zoom in to understand the mechanism. Sometimes you need to zoom out to see where that mechanism fits into your life and what you should do about it.
This whole journey, it sounds exhausting, to be honest. The source calls it the valley of complexity.
It is the arc of learning for any complex topic.
Yeah.
You start on Mount Stupid, you have premature simplicity, you've read one article and you think you have it all figured out. It's easy, just print more money.
I have lived on Mount Stupid many times.
We all have a summer home there. But then you learn a little bit more and you fall off the mountain into the valley of complexity. Suddenly, you see all 7 truth levers. You see the contradictions. You see the messy history. And it feels overwhelming. It feels like nihilism. Nothing is true. Everything is subjective. Who can say what is right?
I think a lot of us are stuck there right now. We're doom scrolling in the bottom of the valley.
The only way out is not to try and climb back up Mount Stupid. You can't unsee the complexity you've discovered, but to start the long, slow climb up the other side to the peak of earned resimplification.
Resimplification.
You have to eventually simplify to act.
Yeah.
You look at all the mess and say, okay, I see the complexity, I see the flaws in every option, but I still have to vote. I still have to raise my kid. I still have to choose a career. You make a choice, knowing it's imperfect.
That's the pilot coming back. You adjust the instruments and you keep flying the plane. You don't just circle the airport forever because the weather isn't perfect.
Precisely. Burnout happens when you try to hold all the complexity in your head at once, all the time. You can't. Your brain isn't built for it. You have to distill.
So what does this wisdom actually look like in the real world today? Because we don't really have sages on the mountain anymore. We have influencers. And influencers are not sages.
They definitely are not. The old model of wisdom, the hermit on the hill, had a lower ceiling on knowledge. They had less raw information to process. But they had a much higher floor. They had silence, time for reflection, and stable communities.
And we have the opposite.
And we have the opposite. So today, we have what the source calls distributed wisdom. No single person has it all. You have to stitch it together from different sources. You might get your functional truth from a fitness coach, your moral truth from a philosopher you read, and your objective truth from a scientist you follow. You have to be your own synthesizer.
But that feels lonely. The source brings up this concept of epistemic loneliness. This really, really resonated with me. It's that feeling when you are the learner in the room. You see the complexity, you see the nuance, and everyone else around you is just screaming slogans at each other.
It's a very specific kind of isolation. You feel like you're speaking a dialect that no one else understands. You're at a holiday dinner, and your uncle said something wild and simplistic, and your cousin says something equally wild and simplistic in the other direction, and you're sitting there thinking, well, actually, it's a conflict between an interpretive truth framework and a pragmatic truth outcome.
And if you say that out loud, they throw mashed potatoes at you.
They absolutely should, because that is not helpful in that moment.
So how do you deal with that? Because my instinct is to just jump in and say, actually, it's more complicated than that.
Which usually just makes people hate you. The source offers some really important validation here. This feeling isn't arrogance on your part, it's a skill gap. You have trained a muscle, the nuance muscle, that others in the room might not have trained yet. It's like being a professional bodybuilder and getting mad that your friends can't help you lift the couch.
So what's the move then? Do I just stay silent and let the slogans fly?
The advice here is a bit brutal, but it's really necessary. Don't force nuance where it isn't wanted. Depth obligates humility, not dominance. If you try to force someone to see all 7 truth levers when they're just trying to vent their subjective truth, their pain, their frustration, you aren't being wise. You're being a jerk.
So wisdom isn't just knowing the levers.
It's knowing which lever is appropriate for the moment. Wisdom is knowing. Is this a moment for a complex lecture? Or is this a moment for a supportive nod and a simple, that sounds really tough?
Okay. Guilty as charged. That brings us to the internal versus the external view of wisdom. How wise person feels versus how they appear.
Exactly. Internally, the sources are clear. Wise people don't feel wise. They don't feel like Yoda. They feel quietly uncertain. They have a very high tolerance for ambiguity. They are comfortable with saying, I don't know.
But on the outside, they look solid.
Externally, they appear calm. They pause before reacting. They don't get triggered easily. And here's the biggest tell. They change their minds without drama.
Without drama, that's key. It's not an identity crisis for them to be wrong about something.
It's just an instrument update. Oh, the altimeter was off by a few feet. Calibrated. Okay, continuing on.
Yeah.
They don't attach their ego to their map of the world. The map is a tool, not their identity.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from the anxiety of the late-night doom scroll to the 7 types of truth, the trap of premature simplicity, and the long climb toward wisdom. If we had to synthesize this all down, what's the big aha moment? What's the tool we can take home from this deep dive?
For me, it all comes back to that distinction between a weapon and a tool. We are trained by our media and our politics to treat truth as a weapon.
A thing to win with.
Yes, we
Yeah.
use it to win battles, to assert dominance, to prove we are the smart ones. We sharpen our facts to stab the other side. But we need to make a conscious shift to treat truth as a tool to navigate reality.
Tool truth versus weapon truth.
Weapon truth asks, who is right and who is wrong? Tool truth asks, does this map help us flourish? Does this framework help us solve the problem and live together?
And this doesn't mean falling into relativism, right? It's not all truths are equal.
Not at all. Physics is not the same as poetry. A racist ideology is not the same as a human rights framework. But we also shouldn't insist on a rigid absolutism where only one kind of truth, like objective data, matters.
It's about constraint. Does the truth hold up?
Yes. The grounding thought here is that we judge a truth by its constraints. Does it survive contact with reality? Does it lead to good outcomes? Does it allow us to build a functioning society?
This has been incredibly grounding, honestly. I feel a little less frantic about the state of the world, just having a better framework for understanding the confusion.
That's the power of clarity. It doesn't solve the world's problems. Inflation is still there, the wars are still there, but it orients you within them. And that orientation is half the battle.
I want to leave our listener with a final thought, something the source mentioned that I think is going to stick with me for a long time. Depth doesn't obligate agreement, it obligates humility.
That's the one. That's the whole deep dive in one sentence.
Next time you find yourself in a debate, or you're doom scrolling, or you feel that righteous anger rising of, I am right and they are so wrong, just pause for a second. Check your instruments. Ask yourself, which lever am I pulling right now? Am I pulling the math lever while they're pulling the morality lever? And is there another lever, maybe another 2 or 3, that I'm completely blind to in this moment?
Focus on staying oriented rather than just on being right.
Stay calibrated.
That's it.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.